Okay, so today we're going to do another try at integrating Redux with React Navigation into a React Native application. So it's a little bit tricky because if we use Redux, we have to keep all of our application state in one place in our store. So luckily, React Navigation has support for that. So React Navigation is aware that we'll do things like dispatch actions to change our location. But to do that, we do have to take a few steps. So today, I'm going to build a simple application that has two tabs that you can go back and forth between. And then we'll do a little bit of dispatching our own custom actions to do a login to Facebook. So in this window over here, you can see I've started an app. All I've done is I did create React native app. Then I added three libraries. I added React Navigation, Redux, and React Redux. So without further ado, we'll go to Visual Studio Code. We have our basic application here. Let's just make sure everything's running. Do yarn start. Actually, I'll start making changes while we wait for that. So in yarn start, we'll want to hook up our Redux application. So the same as we did on the web. So import provider, import create store. So for our app, we can wrap it in a store or a provider. Let's call it app reducer for now. So everything within the provider gets access to the Redux store. That's specified here. I'll define the reducers in just a second. The second thing you might be asking is what is app with navigation state? And we'll actually have to create a smarter app that knows about navigation states. We'll do that in a separate file as well. Actually, let's start there. So we'll start with app with navigation state. So it's like, this is a kind of naming convention. You might do app with navigation or something like that, but we'll call it app with navigation state. This means an app that's aware of navigation. So we will create a new file. Let's create some new folders here as well. So we have source, and we have, we'll call this navigators. We'll call our file, if I can right click, app navigation.js. So here we'll import React, and then I'll just do a quick thing here. Export const app navigator equals tab navigator. So we'll do a tab navigator start. That's the most apps these days use a tab navigator. The left side will be, when we define a tab navigator, we'll have two different arguments we pass to every object. The left is the name of the route, and the right is like what you see. So for our app, if I didn't explain that correctly, I'll just build a simple two-tab application. What are map screen, profile screen? Oh, those are actually components. I'll just import those in a second. The next thing we need to do is to so this syntax might look new to you. We haven't gone over this syntax before, and I'll explain in just a moment if I don't make enough typos. So what we've done here is we've actually defined a whole component in just 3 lines. So this is called the stateless return or stateless functional declaration component. This is the same thing as doing what we did before, like class app with navigation state extends component and defining a render function, so on and so forth. Now, the reason why we want to use this functional declaration on lines 9, 10, 11, the first reason is it's cool because it's short and concise, which we all know that we like short code. But really, it's when you have Redux, you don't use a lot of state. So we don't use this.state with Redux very frequently. So this helps us keep our code more functional. So Redux favors a more functional approach. And we've talked in class about how we like to keep our components short, but also not as dumb as possible. So they shouldn't have a lot of logic around keeping their own internal state. Now with the addition of Redux, we can take that very frequently, use that kind of approach very frequently. So here, using this type of syntax, aside from being cool, actually helps us keep our code simpler. So the recommendation I would make is kind of try to start with this type of syntax, and then if you find yourself needing to either add states or component lifecycle methods, so things like component did mount, then you'll have to change back to this class syntax. But here in the navigation, we're going to have to do what's called add navigation helpers. I don't have a good answer for what this does. Well, I do. So this adds you the ability to call this props.navigation.navigate. So now all of your children can call navigate the correct way. We have to add like this. We have to make sure this dispatch is the correct dispatch because this has to hook up to our store. And the way we hook that up to our store is we make that prop accurate. Store all of our navigation state in a reducer called nav, and the next step we'll define our reducers. There's a whole bunch more things we need to import. Oh gosh. Imports. One other quick note here. This is just destructuring our arguments. This is the same thing as doing this and doing props.dispatch. But it's cooler to do this syntax as well. The two last imports are map screen and profile screen. Let me make those real quick. Make a folder called components and add map screen.js. So let's use that cool syntax. Map screen. And we'll just do view text. Hello, this is where the map goes. My autocomplete has screwed up. We need to import view and text. I'll kind of copy and paste this for profile screen. And here we will now import profile screen. The two screens we just made, profile screen from components. Let's see, do we have any errors? Let's open the apps. We will, in that we don't have this app reducer defined. Oh, we probably haven't imported app with navigation state from source navigators /app navigation. Okay, so starting iOS. I think it may almost compile, but let's get app reducer going. So we'll make a new folder for reducers. Oops. I'll call it, how about app reducer? Here, let's define our first reducer, which is nav reducer. So remember, reducer takes two arguments, the existing past state and the next action, and to return the next state. So what's our next state? Well, remember that every reducer also receives every action. So log in, log out, click button, every reducer processes all those things. But the ones that the nav reducer is going to care about are the ones related to navigation. Well, luckily we can use our nav navigator that we defined before. It has a method on it called get state for action. And if this will turn null if the action is irrelevant or doesn't change the navigation. So turn it, but if it's null, don't do anything, just return state. And I provided a initial default argument or default value for that state. So the first time it gets called, state will be undefined. Let's give it an initial state, and that can also use any function called get state for action for this little backwards seeming. Get action for, I always forget the exact, get action for path and params. So this just means the default page will be the map. We probably need to import app. Navigators / app navigation. And now to make this navigator take effect, we'll do counts app reducer equals combine reduce. Combine reducers nav reducer. Export it, and we actually need to import combine reducers as well. That's all that we need for a reducer. Let's see how we're doing on the compiling front. Oh my. Let's see if we can get past 92% here. Okay, so I don't, it's taking a while. While that builds, let me just do a quick recap of what we've done. So we have a provider, we're passing a store, the reducer that we take is app reducer, which is composed of one reducer called nav, and that just looks at the action and asks the router to edit the navigation state as necessary. The router is defined here in app navigation, which is a tab navigation with two routes, map and profile. So hopefully that's been enough time. Oh, great. We have an error, but this is good. Can't find variable app reducer in double check that app.js has app reducer. We forgot to import app reducer. Reducers / app reducer. Will lead us to compiling. Significantly faster this time. Initial nav state. Oh, we made a mistake here. Initial nav state. So normally I hope your compiling is faster. Right now it's running a little bit more slowly because I'm recording video. Great. We have two tabs you see at the bottom. There's of course ways to add icons and such. Map and profile. You may be wondering why it looks like we have blank screens instead of the text that we set. So let me look at map screen. It's actually because the text is up in the upper left corner. So common debugging error. So we'll set this style to be centered. I'll justify content. I'll do that for profile screen as well. I actually want here, let's add more stuff here. Let's add a button. So the built-in button type to React Native. That'll help us log in. For now, on press, it'll just do console.log, which we can see in our console here, logging in. Now, we have two functioning tabs, so let's move on to part 2 of this daunting task we have before us, which is hooking up this action. So anytime that you want to dispatch actions, we'll need the dispatch word. So we need to connect to our Redux store. And to do that, we run connect. Connect, of course, takes two options. Oops, I'm running in Korean. Sorry. One is map state to props and map dispatch to props. We'll actually use a name, so I'll do state dot. I'll make a new reducer called user reducer, and that will have a name field. So here we can do this dot props dot name. Let's dispatch to props equals state. Wait, typo there. Dispatch. And we'll do. Let's call this like login. And we'll do some things here. So in the previous lectures, we did Redux Thunk or React Promise middleware as a way to chain actions together. So when you have asynchronous actions, for example, here we'll have to go to Facebook, log in, and come back. It's nicer to use those things. Here I'll keep it simple and just pass callbacks. So on login, we're going to dispatch an action. The actions usually have, it's a convention to have type and data as the two objects, but they don't need to be. The type, I'll start login. For data, like I said, I'll pass a callback, so I'll just do a callback. So this is what happens when we finish. The data field in this one, I'll actually just pass the name. Now on press, I'll do this dot props dot login. Oh, I need to connect. Can be connected. So connect. State two props. All right, let's have two props. So undefined is on object this dot props dot name. So that error you saw flash will happen again. And it's very confusing the first time you see that error. Oh, it's actually because in the stateless function null component declaration, we don't have access to this. There's no this because it's just a function that runs. The props is actually an argument here. So we do this. However, it's also even cooler to do what we saw before with the destructuring. So we'll just have name and login here. And that way we know that there should be a name, there should be a login. So it doesn't like state.user.nav. It's saying undefined is on object. When you see that, you know that you're actually probably doing a null pointer reference on user. That's because we didn't actually define our user reducer yet. So let's do that. And user reducer will be very simple. We'll have a more standard thing structure for this reducer, switching on the type. So in this case, actually, start login won't change our state at all. It might, if we had a full featured app, then maybe it would do something to show you a "Hey, I'm logging in now" button, but we'll skip that for now. Finish login should do something. Let's return a new state where name is now action.data. Let's assume that the data field on this action refers to the name. That's a new state that will return. And in case none of these matter, we'll just return state. And then we need to do const initial user state equals. Let's start with saying name is unknown. So we'll give that a second to go. This one app goes. This is my profile screen. Let's see, did I do that right? Name is this. This may not have updated correctly. Let's double check that I did that correctly. State, initial user state. Oh, not state.user.nav. State.user.name. Sorry if you watched the video and saw that error. It will screw me out for me to fix it. Cool. Now we want to log in. So I'm going to demonstrate using Facebook login. Remember that we're using this thing called Expo. So that's what Create React's native app does. And you can read all about Expo at docs.expo.io. On the left side of the page that loads in just a second, you'll see all the different APIs we have access to. And the one we're interested in right now, of course, is Facebook. So we go here. There's instructions on what to do because you have to do just one quick step to set up your Facebook application. I may not have clicked on that as well as I thought I have. So you have to add a bundle ID and such. I've already done that. You can see my settings here. Give it just a second to load. But the main thing you need out of this is the app ID. It will show in the left corner in just a second. So my app ID is 1336, that long number. The settings I had to change were under the settings tab. So I'm trying to click on it and failing. And you can see I scrolled down, I added a platform called iOS, and I set the bundle ID here. For now we want this app ID, copy and paste that. All right, here in App Reducer, I left a comment here saying do something. So here's where I actually want to log into Facebook. Make a new function called log into Facebook. It can be very much modeled off the sample code that Expo gives us. So I should be making a new file for this, but I'll just throw it in here for now. What was my app ID again? Here it is. And I'll replace this. Complete. So instead of being alert.alert, we'll do let's user data equals response.json. And we'll do we'll call onComplete with the name. So user data dot. I'll get rid of this. So I need to await here. And so when we're done, we'll be calling our onComplete with the name that we got. And if you remember our map screen, sorry, our profile screen, that will just dispatch a finished login with name. So if everything is correct, we should be able to log into Facebook here and see our real name there instead of unknown hacker lady. That work? How did I actually call it? You just call login here. We pass it our action.data, because remember that's where our callback is. Log me in. Now we see a nice little Facebook pop-up, so that's a good initial sign that things might be working. Email address. Let me hide this for a second. Now I see Charles Lee. So we have the complete Redux flow. So Expo made that step really easy of logging to Facebook because it gave us that nice function called logging to Facebook async. It does other things nicely too. In particular, things like adding maps. So I won't go into too much detail with this. I'll just almost copy and paste, but you have a map view component that we can use. So here's a sample code here that will load in just 1 second. So all you have to do is copy and paste or drop the map view component into your app. So let's go to MapScreen.js. Instead of saying, hello, this is where the content goes, we actually drop the content. And then we have to import FView from, and boom, you have a map in your application. Note that these are all props you can set, so you can always be changing this. This is something where you actually might want to use state instead of Redux, because if you're kind of dragging the map around a lot, maybe this is something you'll want to change, but maybe not. On iOS, so you'd be using either Google Maps or Apple Maps. And on Android, of course, you use Google Maps. Another thing to note too is that, so we are running in this thing called Expo. So Expo is a container for your app. And while we're in the container, we don't have to do any extra setup. But if you ever want to deploy to the App Store or have people launch your app directly, so you don't want to have to tell people, download Expo, then download our app. then you'll be doing what's a standalone app, and there's a couple extra steps to do with both Facebook and Google. But anything that requires external auth or talking to third-party services will probably need some special setup. But here, now you see we have a map. It'll take a second to load, but it should show you a picture of San Francisco in just a moment. Of course, our profile tab still works. Great, thank you for listening to this tutorial where we covered Redux, navigation, and a very simple maps integration.